morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm glad we could make it work on this rescheduled date. Although the weather almost got us again today, but we're going to make it through. So thank you all for being here, and thank you to all of those who are joining us virtually as well. This is the 2022 City Update with Mayor Duke Bennett. I'm Kristen Craig, Executive Director of the Terre Haute Chamber of Commerce. Before we get started today, I do want to take a minute. We all woke up to a lot of news happening around the world today. Let's just take a minute and think about those who are being impacted by that and all of our world leaders who have some big decisions ahead of them today. So now let's get into City Update. So last year when this event was virtual, I remember thinking ahead to 2022, imagining brighter days and better circumstances. But we are continuing to weather the storm. There is a bright light in the work that's been done and continues to be done here in Terre Haute. It's easy to be negative, but there's a lot of things to be celebrating that are happening. We have the Convention Center, Holman Center remodel, grant funding, casino, and lots more. There are lots of good things ahead for our area. We're bringing West Central Indiana to the table and gaining state and federal funding in the process. Thanks in part to the work of Mayor Bennett, along with partnerships he has created in Terre Haute and the surrounding communities. While we wish it could have been a larger sum, the 6-county region in Wabash River Development Authority was awarded $20 million as part of the Regional Economic Acceleration and Development Initiative, also known as READY. And another one of the big initiatives that the Chamber shares with Mayor Bennett is the See You in Terre Haute Community Plan. You'll hear a lot more about the great progress that has been made there today. But first, I have to mention the support of some of our sponsors. Our title sponsor, AT&T of Indiana, who generously supports this event each year. Our supporting sponsors, Brampton Brick, Duke Energy, Garmon Construction Services, Indiana State University, and RJL Solutions. Thank you all for your support. And our business supporters, Commonwealth Engineers and Union Health. We do have a couple of special guests joining us here today. We're fortunate to have Congressman Larry Bouchon. I was a little worried the weather might impact your trip, but you made it anyway, so thank you very much for taking the time to be in Terre Haute. We're also joined by Commissioner Mike Morris, Commissioner Schweitzer, and City Councilman Earl Elliott. There might be some other elected officials that are joining us virtually, so welcome to all of you and thank you for taking the time. Before we kick things off, I do want to direct you to the screen. We have a quick video from our volunteer chair of the board this year, Bernice Hellman. She couldn't be here today, but did have a few words she wanted to share.
It's on the far left, right? All the way on the far left. Yeah.
We did test it yesterday. It did work. Well, we may not be able to hear from Bernice today. That's okay. We'll keep moving along. Let me imitate what Bernice said. I know she was thankful to all of you for joining us this morning. She has stepped right into the role of being chair this year, and we're appreciative of her time and service. So before we get into the program, a couple of other quick things to mention. We do have questions at the time for questions at the end, so please wait. We'll facilitate that after Mayor Bennett finishes his presentation. And also, we are recording today's presentation. So if you'd like to go back and review it, we will send you a link afterwards for all those who are registered. So now would be the time I would be introducing Pepper Mulhurin, who's with AT&T and the sponsor of today's event. Unfortunately, due to the weather, she could not make it up here today. So I'm going to be taking on the role of introducing Mayor Bennett. Mayor Bennett is currently serving his 4th term as Terre Haute Mayor, a position he's held since 2007. He's a Terre Haute native. He was employed with Hamilton Center for almost 30 years before running for mayor. He and his wife Pam were also local business owners for more than 25 years. On a personal note, the mayor and Pam are parents to 2 adult children and 3 grandchildren. Do we have that right? 4. I thought maybe we were missing one. Every year we got to keep upping that total. As mayor of Terre Haute, he stays very busy, serving on dozens of boards and commissions. Notably, he is a member of the board of the Indiana Conference of Mayors and the Urban Mayors Caucus. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you today Terre Haute Mayor Duke Bennett.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming out. The weather was a little worse than what I thought it was going to be this morning, but our street department's out doing their thing. Where's Ernie at? There he is. We haven't had a whole lot of snow or ice the last few years. It's been kind of nice, but whenever it gets slick, that's when our phone starts ringing. Of course, you guys would expect that. But I was a little caught off guard by the ice this morning. But thanks for coming out and dealing with it. I apologize for having to delay that. I was a little under the weather last month and we had to move it, which is pretty rare. I'm not sick very often, but I couldn't make it work that particular day. But we'll go ahead and get started here. I just appreciate, I see a lot of familiar faces and I know you've all come out to get some information. And if somebody has an urgent question as we go through this, feel free to wave your hand, but I'll stay as long as I need you to answer anything after we're done. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on financials because we are doing really, really well. I couldn't be any more excited about it. And I know those of you that have been here for the last few years have been hearing me build upon this, but wanted to touch on a few things for 2021 first. So 6 straight years last year with an overall balanced budget. So beginning in 2016, 2015 was our tough financial year. And ever since then, we've had an overall balanced budget. We've got about $110 million budget for the city of Terre Haute every year. The general fund just ended this past year with about a $3.2 million. We're making some final adjustments. Our annual financial report is due March 1st. So probably tomorrow they'll make all the final tweaks to it in order to submit it to the state. But it'll be in that $3.2 million range. So we were at 1.2 million in 2019, 2.1 million in 2020, and then we've got a surplus of 3.2 million. So each year we continue to build upon those reserves. We reduced our TAW and redevelopment loans from 9 million in 2017. That was our most that we had to borrow. This temporary to float us through. Because the problem we have is the first 6 months of the year. We don't get paid till June. Our big money comes in June and then in December. So when we get to the end of the year and we pay all the bills, the first 6 months will dry because we don't get any revenue, significant revenue until June. And so we use these temporary loans over the years to make sure we're able to operate the way we need to. So we reduced that last year to 4 million. I'll talk about this year here in a second. Our current sanitary bond rating is AA with stable outlook. We have bond insurance with that raised that. And redevelopment is BBB plus with a stable outlook. So those are both increases from where we were back in 2020. We didn't borrow any money last year, so we haven't had a bond update since 2020. We did our 3-year comprehensive financial plan last year, and really the biggest thing out of that is our target, our primary goal is a 12% cash reserve in our operating funds. And so at the end of this year, if everything goes the way we want it to, we will reach that goal. So that's pretty amazing too, when you think about back in 2015, we had a negative $9 million ending cash balance for the year. And we're finishing this year at 3.2 million positive, and we're building a 12% cash reserve. So it's we've come a long way. So next screen. So this current year budget that's been approved, obviously, it will be 7 straight years with a balanced budget. We've eliminated the redevelopment temporary loan, and we've reduced our TAW to 2.5 million. So then we've gone from that 9 million down to 2.5. I wanted to do that as a cushion. I think we probably could have squeezed through and not had any, but the interest rates on that are nothing. I mean, we borrow, well, heck, last year we borrowed 4 million, and I think we paid $100,000 in interest for the year. So it's really inexpensive to borrow the money, and that's with the origination fee too. So it's a small amount of money, but it gives us that cushion, as I said earlier. So my goal will then be to reduce that again next year. We'll probably be able to eliminate it in 24 is what I'm thinking at this point in time. Our audit is, we haven't done the 2020 audit yet. The state is way behind on their audits, but they just contacted us recently. So they're going to be doing the 2020 audit beginning in March. And then they tell us they're gonna get the 2021 audit done by September. So we need to get that caught up, because as we want to borrow money or do any other things, it's important to have our audits in place. So right now, we're still operating under the 2019 audit, but that's the state's fault and not ours. And I want to mention tax cap credits, because I was on a call the other day, and we had a elected official on there who was hammering me about talking about tax caps. He says, that's old news. And, you know, and some of you heard that, were on that call. And it's frustrating for me, because the tax caps still affect us. It's still going on. Okay, it started in 2009. We started out at about a $500,000 loss, which means people got to their caps. We can't collect that 500,000. Well, last year, the actual amount was 13.7 million. And this year, luckily, it's only 100,000 more, but 13.8 million is what the tax cap estimate is for this particular year. So what that means is, the state has approved our budget, council approved our budget, the state has approved our budget, but that's the money we can't collect because people are at their caps. And so that money's left on the table. We're the biggest in Vigo County. It's school corporation's about 6 million, county's about 6 million, but we're at 13.8. And so even when assessed values go up, when it pushes you against the cap, that's the money that we are approved to collect, but we can't collect because of the caps. And so that's our highest number since 2009. So for any of those legislators over there that talk about that's old news and it doesn't affect us anymore, that's just simply not true. And I just wanted to point that out, because it's irritating for me that our legislators don't want to talk about tax caps anymore. And that doesn't include our TIF districts or our sanitary districts. So we lose another 2 million in the sanitary district a year, and the TIF districts are probably in 1.5 million range. So that's just operating funds, general operating funds. Next slide. Talk about public safety for a minute. This is another kind of a hot topic in a way, because, you know, every day you hear on the news about how crime is going crazy, especially in major cities. Luckily, we're not seeing that here. Applaud our Terrell Police Department, chief's here today. But just look at the statistics here, which it tells a great story. So the first column is 2021, as you can see. We had 9 murders back in 20. It's kind of a crazy year. We haven't had 9 murders. That was the highest we've had since I've been mayor. But all those were solved within 24 hours, I believe, Chief, if I remember right. All but one, maybe. Maybe it was took a couple of days on another one. But you know, most of the time they know kind of there's connections and they figure it out pretty quick. But that's a pretty high number last year, or previous year, 2020. But in 2021, we had 3. So if you just look at the rapes, robberies, and aggravated assaults, we had 388 in 2021. We had 451 in 20. So our violent crime is down. We're up a little bit on burglaries, breaking and entering, larceny, kind of motor vehicle theft, those property crime categories at 3,035. And so we're up a little bit but overall we're down. And so I feel really good about this. We're not seeing that kind of a thing here. We're not going to let that happen. But when you hear those stories, and we've even got some local folks that are putting things out in social media world and things, and talk about our data is looking like our crime rate's going up. And I wanted to mention one thing. This is what every community reports to the FBI. These are the categories. That's all. There's other crimes that happen, but these are the categories that we're all required to report. So we send our data to the state police, and then they enter into the FBI system for all the police departments in the state of Indiana. And they made a little bit of a boo-boo on calculating numbers. And so these are the actual numbers. These are the numbers that will be corrected. The state police just sent us an email telling us that they'll get our numbers corrected for last year. And so these are solid, good numbers. And I feel very, very happy, but I also know that, you know, it's tough to be a police officer right now. There's a lot of criminal element out there. The world has changed a lot, but our numbers are very solid. So I'm very proud of what the Terrell Police Department does every single day, and the Sheriff's Department and everybody else. So next slide. We moved into our new police headquarters. You all know that. We were pretty much on time. We were supposed to get in there in October, and it dragged out a little bit, but some of that was on us. Some of it delivery of some carpet, things like that. But considering you know, the supply chain and costs going up, our costs did not go up. Garmong, and thank you for being a sponsor today too, or whoever what can I say about helping us to keep it under budget, keep it on budget. So I feel really good about that. It's that whole project went exactly the way I would have hoped it would have. So great benefit to the taxpayers. We purchased 13 new marked police cars and 6 new unmarked cars last year. We hosted a satellite police academy. Chief Keene reached out to the state police. They closed down the state training facility because of COVID, but they allowed us to host one here. So it's the first time it's ever happened in Terra. We had 26 officers from the surrounding area. 13 of those were our Terra police officers, and got them through the academy that we hosted at the Girl Scout building down at Fairbanks Park. And that was helped us to get officers who had been on the force with us for a while, but didn't have arrest powers because they couldn't go through the class. So that was a really positive thing. I appreciate the chief making that happen. We continue to do training programs for our supervisors and our officers. We continue to ramp up and looking at de-escalation and just a variety of things, bias training, to make sure we're continuing to do everything we need to do to, one, stay in compliance with our accreditation, but do the right thing to serve the citizens of our community. And we hired 9 new police officers last year. Next slide. So for this year, we just recently took delivery of a new hostage negotiator vehicle and an SRT equipment vehicle. We've been upgrading the whole fleet, as I mentioned earlier, with those other cars, but those 2 things were things we did our SRT vehicles, but we hadn't done the support vehicle. It brings all the equipment to the scene. We recently ordered a new code enforcement dog truck. We had an accident. Our truck got totaled, and so it's been tough to get vehicles. If you've tried to buy vehicles, we've had a really hard time getting police cars and trucks and everything else. But we got that on order, and it appears it'll be on its way. And then we ordered 10 new marked cars and 5 unmarked cars for this year. We can continue to work through the fleet. We're replacing some 2012s right now. So we're getting to where we need to be. Just purchased new metal detectors. They're installed and working now, both at City Hall and the Terra Police Department. So new state-of-the-art metal detectors. We're going to be hiring 8 new police officers next month. It'll take us up to 135. We added 2 new positions in the budget for this year, so we'll be at the most police officers we've ever had. We're increasing the law enforcement budget to continue to make sure we keep crime at bay, and so we'll bring those 8 new officers on. We're swearing them in here really soon. It's next couple of weeks. And then new radios. I mentioned that here, and I'll mention on the fire department too. We have to replace our entire radio system. It's going to be expensive. You know, we have a lot of radios. Police and fire are on the state system. All of our other departments are on a private system, and it's all outdated. I mean, our private system's 25 years old, and the police and fire, I think we bought those when I first came into office, so they're reaching the end of their life. And so we're going to have to spend probably about $2 million to replace all of our radios in the city of Terre Haute. So that's going to be a big deal. We're just working through to evaluate things right now. So I haven't put the budget together, but it's probably going to be in the $2 million range. Talk about the fire department for a minute. We hired 8 new firefighters last year. We implemented GPS mapping in all of our response equipment, which really means just using technology to make sure that as we're on the way to the fire, we've got all the latest information. We've got some new streets in the city over the last few years. You know, some of our firefighters aren't familiar with some of those names, so we wanted to make sure that we did what we needed to do in all of our fire hydrants. Everything is in the computer now, so as you're responding to the scene, everything is right in front of you about what you need when you get to that particular location. So much quicker response time is what that comes out of that. We started an internal EMS training so we could train our firefighters in that initial stage. In the past, we had to send them off to class. So we put an in-house system in place so we can do the 2 levels of training we do before paramedic. We do the paramedic outside of the city, but this allows us to get, because everybody has to have EMS training. They have to become an EMT, and the paramedic is the next piece of it, but you got to get them through these first 2 trainings before they can even go to the paramedic class. And so we do that in-house now. We save money. We can put people through the system much faster. And so it is a real good decision that we put that in place, and we're able to control that now and get everybody through those classes. We continue to look at, once again, training. We do a lot of training for all of our firefighters. I didn't put the numbers down this year. I didn't ask the chief about that. He's here today too, but we do a tremendous amount of training. We continue to do that to make sure they have all the resources they need and keep people safe. Inspected all existing firehouses. We hadn't done that in a while, so we've gone through every firehouse and we're working on repairs and upgrades on all of those, kind of biting them off one at a time and making that happen. Our total calls for service last year was 12,359. 69% of those calls were EMS and 31% fire. That's a little bit of a change from previous years. It's usually about 80-20. We had an increase in fires, and so far this year, we've had a huge increase in fires too. So I think we've got some situations out there that will be addressed that maybe we'll reduce that. But there's just a lot of issues with people doing things that, you know, that create a fire hazard. And so as you can see last year, that number is up. And then for this year, we started design on a new east side fire station. We haven't identified the land yet. We've got some ideas. We're working to work through that, but we've got our, we've hired an architectural firm to help us design that one. It kind of was waiting to see where the casino was going to land. So that kind of sealed the deal now, so we can move ahead with that. We're implementing a new water rescue boat. In the past, whenever we had a water rescue call on the Wabash River specifically, we had to wait for Sugar Creek to come because they have the water rescue equipment. We now have purchased a boat and a trailer, and we've trained 50 firefighters in swift water rescue. And so we'll be putting that boat in Station 2 probably in April and responding from Station 2 at 9th and College to be able to get to the Wabash River primarily, but anywhere else, we can help anywhere in the county. But that's something that we've just lacked for quite some time. We were dependent on volunteers, and so now we're able to do that ourselves. We're working on our ISO rating. We're currently at an ISO rating of 3. So we've dropped a couple levels since I've been mayor, 5 to 3, where we're at 78.78%. So we're just really close to an ISO rating of 2. And the chief assures me that we're going to get there when the next rating occurs, which will be within the next year. And a lot of this has to do with training. It has to do with some other things that we have some control over that we haven't had in the past because we didn't have finances to do some of those things or the staff to be able to make it happen. But this will lead to lower insurance costs for everybody when you drop down to those levels. You get to a certain point where you don't get much benefit, but getting to a 2 would get us about where we need to be as a community. That's a pretty good number. We'll be taking delivery on 2 new fire engines soon. We just ordered 2 additional ones that will take delivery on 18 months. That's how long it takes to get a fire truck built, is about 18 months. So we ordered these about 1.5 years ago, and we'll be taking delivery very soon. And then new radios. I won't repeat what I said, but fire department has a big need for specialized radios too. They have to have radios that can't get wet. They can withstand heat. So it's a little different for theirs, a little bit more expensive, but very, very important for them to be able to do their jobs. Good. All right, so we'll talk about major infrastructure projects. In 2021, our community crossings grant was $999,000. That means the state matches us 50%. So we did those 4 projects last year. Most of you have seen those or knew that we did those, but this year we got a little bit less, generally the same amount, but the 4 projects we're going to do be Poplar from 1st to 25th, Fort Harrison Road from US 41 to 13, Blakely from Wabash up to 6th Avenue, and then Fruit Ridge from 6th Avenue to Maple. So that whole stretch through there, we did last year, as you know, we did the north half of that. And so basically what we're telling you is those 4 projects cost $1.6 million. We match that at 50%, but that will be our, fortunately, every year we get nearly $1 million from the state for community crossings. So those are the 4 projects we'll be doing this year. Go ahead. Yeah, there we go. So projects we completed last year, Lafayette Avenue was the biggest one, the $8 million project, north of Fort Harrison. That was a project that was on the books for a very long time. We bid it out, I think 2 different times, and it came in over budget. And so we finally were able to get that done and completed last year. Very happy about that. The people in the north end are very happy about that. And then we did other paving and sidewalk projects. We spent more on paving last year than we ever have as the city of Terre Haute. So we spent that, if you thinking of that other slide, that we spent that $900,000 from the state plus the 2.3 million. So we did over $3 million worth of paving in the city last year and some sidewalks in the city. Projects for this year, 13th 8th Avenue Railroad Overpass. We're in the property acquisition phase right now. It's still on track to be bid out next April, 1 year from this April, and projects start in June. So they're still on. That's the same schedule we've had for the last 2 years. That's a $28.6 million railroad overpass. Our match is about 7 million of that. It's come down a little bit, which is good. The state's paying for the rest of that through that local tracks grant that we're able to get. So I always applaud and thank our legislators and the governor for making sure we were one of the 13 communities in Indiana that got a local tracks grant. We got one of the bigger ones. Margaret Avenue, 3rd to Creighton Road, that section on the west end of Margaret Avenue. It's in formal design now. We've hired a consultant to design it. So that's our next big target to be funded. I do not have the money yet to build it. So we'll go through the formal design process. It will position us for federal funding. Earmarks are back. Congressman Bouchon, I know, don't make any faces. I get it. I hear you. But I want to tap in and make sure we get as much as we can. And so we'd love to be able to do that next section. 13th and Wabash, we're in formal design of making that intersection have a real turn lane with signals there. So that's kind of a big deal for us. That's a real bottleneck there at 13th and Wabash. The Wabash Avenue Flat Street project, we intend to, this is kind of, part of this is a sanitary or stormwater related project, but we would like to eliminate the curbs in the section from 9th to 7th first, and then eventually from 6th or 7th to 6th, and remove the curbs and make it a flat street. It would still have 2 lanes of traffic. It would still have parking, still have a variety of other features, but it would no longer have curbs. And so you collect that stormwater. Right now, all of our stormwater downtown goes into the sewer system. So we have to eliminate that. And so it serves 2 purposes. 1, to keep the water out of the storm system, out of the sewer system. And then 2, that we can create an environment that 1, looks really good, very appealing. If you've been in Evansville, they've got it in front of their convention center. They've done that. Indianapolis did a little bit, but did a little fancier than what most people would do to lead you to Georgia Street. But this project, it's not cheap, but it's part of that long-term control plan. And I'll talk about that later. And then a Creighton Road lane addition that we're working on in-house, kind of doing pre-design. We need to bump out in front of the mill and be able to have a turn lane through there. So I don't have that funded yet, but we'll get it designed this year. And hopefully we'll be able to do it first thing next spring, 1 year from now. Go ahead. And these are 4 projects that we're working on right now that we haven't really moved into that preliminary design yet, but the Margaret Avenue section from 25th to Fruit Ridge. So we'll have every section then. We're working on east, then after we get that west section. But this will be done, part of this will be done through redevelopment, and part of it will be done through the city, our engineering folks, and our funding sources. But that'll be the next section that we'll begin to work on, because I need to know what the cost is going to be. So we'll do that preliminary design, begin that later this year. Lafayette Avenue, then south of Fort Harrison down to Lost Creek. That's the next section. Doesn't have any drainage. So we'd be doing the same thing we did on the north side of Fort Harrison, on the south side of Fort Harrison, down to Lost Creek, where it picks up where we do have curbs and gutters and storm drains. And then Hunt Road, which runs along the airport. The road's in terrible shape. Those of you who go out there, I mean, it's just bad. It's an old county road, if you will. It's annexed into the city, and it was never built to the same standards you would put in the city, but it's in bad shape. But we need to upgrade that and connect it to the south to New Margaret. And we'd also need to upgrade home, and then we'll connect, so kind of be a T. So we're working with Thrive right now, and we're working with the airport to figure out how we can put a project together, maybe get some EDA funding, the federal economic development folks, to fund that particular project. But we're going to start advancing that project. And then as part of our railroad plan that we did back in 2010, we had 3 overpasses in there. So we got the one down at Margaret, we're going to get the one down at 13th and 8th Avenue, and the third one that the plan called out was one downtown. Most likely to be an underpass on either Poplar or Ohio. I have no funding for that one yet, and it's probably going to be another 25, 28 million to do that. But then we will complete our railroad plan that we put together in 2010. So we'll be starting to target that and figure out how we can get some federal help to build that last one, and then we'll have them in the key places. Other projects that we're working on right now, and in the City Hall, you know, it's a mess. Parking lot project, $2.7 million upgrade to our parking lot. It'll be done by the end of April. You know, they're still working out there doing concrete work, but when the asphalt plant opens, then we'll be able to pave that north section and get that open. And then to turn to the River Phase 1 project in between the courthouse and City Hall, that's $1 million project. that primarily grants and private funds, but we have a portion in that too. And that will be done this spring. So there's 4 other phases of Turn to the River that will come later. But these 2 will be completed this spring. So that's going to be really nice when we get that back open and functioning. We're doing a lighting upgrade on 3rd Street. We completed phase 1, which is from Oak to Locust roughly last fall. Phase 2 is underway. It's from Locust up to Maple. Then we'll be working south in 2 more sections. It's an expensive venture. Duke Energy, Rick's here today. It's not cheap, but all those poles were pretty much shot. A lot of them were rusted, were ready to fall over. If a car would hit it, just even bump it, the poles would fall. And so, it's one of those things, the state of Indiana, that's a federal highway. Yeah, they make the locals pay for this stuff. And so that's another frustrating thing I have to state, but it is what it is. So we have to do that. And we're paying for it. We're doing it. But we'll get, I don't know if we'll get those other 2 phases, probably not done by the end of this year. There's some supply chain issues on some of those aluminum poles and stuff. But and just thinking about that new traffic signal we put in at 25th and Margaret, it took us 7 months to get the poles and the electronics for that. 7 months. Normally it takes about 30 days. So this is slow, but we're doing that. We're also looking at some other areas for lighting upgrade. Ohio Boulevard is one. Those the wires out there shot, the trees are all grown into it. We're looking at some things in Farrington Grove. We're looking at some things in the 12 Points area. So we're going to begin to start replacing these and upgrading them to LED lighting. The Gears Grant Wi-Fi access project with the Vigo County School Corporation. We wrote our check in December to them, and they're working on the city portion of this. Most of our firehouses, community buildings, they'll all have Wi-Fi access for kids, and eventually we can open that up to the general public once we get the first phase of this done. But they'll be done with that. I talked to Josh the other day. They think they'll be done with all these city locations by June. So we're going to have a lot more Wi-Fi access in a variety of locations all across the city. And then in the county, they're doing the same thing. So this whole county will be saturated with Wi-Fi locations. First phase for students, second phase for general public, at least in the city. I don't know if the county's going to do that or not, but we're going to do that in the city. We have a new computer system to manage our in our engineering department for permits, inspections, all those kind of things. We brought it online in December, so we're still working out a few bugs, but you're able to do everything online now. It's a pretty sophisticated system. This is just the first step in that, but we link everything together. So, when a building needs to be inspected after a remodel or a new build, when we send the fire department out, they're linked to this, or will be very soon, where they do their inspection, and then we can see what the exact status of everything. It used to be kind of a mix of some paper and some computer, but now it's all in one system. So it's a state-of-the-art system that we have much more to come after that, tying it with our GIS system. But if the first phase is online now and you're able to get permits online, we're still ramping that up, and we have a lot more upgrades and things to do to that to provide more services to the community. You'll start to see some signage. I think last year I showed you some samples of what those look like. The CIB approved an $80,000 expenditure last year to help pay for the first phase to direct people to the convention center. So you're going to start seeing some signage that will be mounted, box type things on the sidewalks in certain areas that will begin to point people to Holman Center and the Swope Art Museum and the convention center, those kind of things. And then we'll branch out from there. So we get people from I-70 and 41 downtown. Then when they get to downtown, they get to where they need to go. So phase 1 of that will begin to happen later this year. Go ahead. Now I want to talk just about a few parks things here for a minute. Brittle Bank Park, we got a state DNR grant for $250,000 to upgrade the pickleball courts down there. So we're going to double the number of pickleball courts, a new restroom, and a parking lot. And so that'll be project will happen this year. It'll get completed. Ray Park, phase 1 here for the clubhouse. Ray Park is a multifaceted effort that we're going to do. We see that as an opportunity for a health campus in a way, to not just be a golf course. There's tennis courts there. Those tennis courts have to be replaced. They've been there for a very long time, but we're kind of working on these pieces. Well, the first piece is to save the clubhouse, so we don't have to build a new facility down there. So Earl Elliott and some others are raising some funds to help do that. We want that to be a public-private partnership, and they're raising some money to help make that project a reality, but that'll just be the first phase. We're gonna have a trail around the park, we're gonna have a playground there. We'll move the tennis courts or rebuild the tennis courts. So there's gonna be a variety of things that we're gonna talk about over the next few years, but the first phase of this, I'm hopeful that we can start construction next year. I mean, it's possible we could do something later this year, but the goal would be to reach that financial goal and get that clubhouse done there. Fairbanks Park, multiple projects. We've hired a consultant to do a master plan, and they're reaching the end of that right now. We're gonna have a public session coming up here not too far in the future. There's gonna be probably about 8 projects in Fairbanks Park. So the goal is to make that a destination park, kind of like Deming Park is, but on the river, obviously. So it'll be a variety of things, fixing some things that are there and adding some new features. And they'll be done over time, not all at once, but this master plan then will drive all those activities there. So I would hope the first project we can do will be next spring. And then various parks, I didn't want to list all of them, but we can use some of our ARPA funds, which I'm going to touch on ARPA here in a second. But there are 9 city parks out of our 23 that we can use the ARPA funds on because they're low income areas. And we are going to be doing some splash pads and playground upgrades. So I got some information yesterday that we got some quotes on some things. It's about $200,000 to do a splash pad, and then playgrounds can be $100,000 to $125,000. And so we're just now starting to formulate the plan. We got to work with the park board and make sure it fits in our 5-year master plan for the parks. But we're going to strategically place, so each area of the city will have splash pads and upgraded playgrounds, ADA compliant playgrounds. And one of the parks we're kind of working on right now first is Spencer Park on 8th Avenue. We've done a couple of things already, but we're going to do a few more things there. But as we look at our map of the city, we want to make sure there's something that's available to everybody in the city. And so I'll tell more about that and get that out to the media later once we get it figured out and the park board approves it. But we're going to use some of our ARPA funds to be able to do those things for the quality of life of our residents of our city. So more to come on that. I suspect we'll spend about $2 million for the first 2 years out of the ARPA funds to get that going and then fund some things after that. Trails, we created this past winter or late fall. We created a connector from Creighton Road to the river. So, we've got the river trail that goes from the Y, if you will, down to Holman Street roughly. And so we now have a connector that gets you back out to Creighton Road. So we're going to be doing some signage and some painting and some things this spring to get you from 4th and Holman, where the trail ends, kind of through that mess of 3rd Street and 1st Street to be able to get you to the river. So then technically you'd be able to go from the trail where Thompson Ditch is out on the east side of Holman. Technically, you'd be able to go all the way down Holman, up the river, back through ISU's campus, and all the way out to Twiggs Rest area. So that'll kind of be the connector to put all of that in one giant loop. 13th Street and to 1st Street new path. Right now, that path that goes through ISU's campus is not a very good path. And so we're going to turn that down 10th and a half Street, the curved road that goes back down to Chestnut from 13th Street where the trail hits, and then go through ISU's campus. We got Dr. Curtis here somewhere. We'll be getting with you soon about that. Which won't be too bad. We got to take a few parking spots here by the valley, but outside of that, we're in pretty good shape. And then get you to 4th Street so you can get back and then get to the river. So it'll be a new, cleaner, more safer path than what we have right now. And then 7th of Margaret to Ray Park. So as I talked earlier about having a trail around Ray Park, one of the things that we want to do, cross-country teams like to run around Ray Park now. They run in the grass. And so we want to probably to start with, it'll probably be a gravel crushed stone trail, but then we'll eventually have a hard surface there. But that path that goes on the old railroad tracks, unfortunately, the railroad gave it all back to the private property owners back in 2010. So we have to buy this property now. And so we're going through that process. It's not going to be horribly expensive because half these people don't even know they own that railroad track behind their house. But we're working on the design of that right now. So you'll be able to get from 7th and Margaret on the southeast corner, go all the way down to Davis, which that's where the city and the county line is. And then you'll be able to go all the way around Ray Park. And then eventually the county will pick it up from there on Davis and go south and then be able to head back to the east to go to Riley eventually. So that'll be a whole new stretch out there. So we're working on a design right now. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to do some of this year and then probably most of the rest of it next year. And then we put in for a next level trails grant, you know, where our trailhead is at Blakely and Locust at the bottom of the overpass. That's the connector to the, you know, National Road Heritage Trail. So we put it, it's an expensive trail. It's gonna be about $7 million to go all the way from there to Park County, because Park County has a trail that's come to the Park County line now. They got a next level trails grant and they built that trail. So we want to be able to connect the National Road Heritage Trail to Rockville, basically. And so the only piece that's missing is from Blakely and Locust to the Park Beagle County line. So the county is partnering with us. We put in just for this particular grant, but they're partnering with us to pay for it. So we would take it from Blakely and Locust to Hawthorne, and the county would pick it up at Hawthorne, where the city limits is up to Mill Dam, and then from Mill Dam on up to Park County on an old rail bed. That's a big one. I'm hopeful we'll get funded, but eventually we're going to get to the point where we'll get that project done. So that'll take the trail in, you'll be able to, and you see how that connector works. Okay. Wastewater, stormwater. You know, this is a little scary. So we stopped on our long-term control plan. We finished the high rate treatment facility. We have a building down there we built a few years ago in the first phase of this, and then we added on to the building. So when we have a high rain event, like we've had a few of those recently, we have to route that water. The system fills up to a certain point. I've told all of you this before, but when the system fills up, then we overflow into the river. So every project we do reduces the amount of overflow into the river, which means we don't get fined. And so it's really important that we do that. So on long-term control plan, we had 5 phases that we were approved for back in 2009. We finished half of phase 2. The other half was the main lift station. We ran into some environmental issues down there. You know, some people, it's still interesting how they question that, like, how did you not know that? Because this stuff is moving. You know, we dug this giant hole down there and we worked there for almost 2 months and had no issues. And then one day we show up down there and the fish are dead, floating in one of those ponds down there. And so we went through all this stuff, and it's coming from a particular property that's not ours, you know, to the north, or to the east, I should say. And we're working through that, and IDM and EPA know all about that, but they contaminated our property. And so we're reworking and redesigning that so it'll be higher up. It won't have to be so far in the ground, so we can still build it there. But we're in negotiation with IDM and the EPA for our long-term control plan. So our original plan was $110 million. We had 20 years to fix it. Well, we spent that $110 million because that didn't take very long to get there. But what we proposed to them, they tell us what we have to do, and then we give them a proposal, what we think we'd like to do. All 3 proposals that we presented to them were about $300 million. Okay, that's what we have to spend over the next, hopefully 30 years. That's what we've asked for instead of 20 years. We'll know in October what they're going to agree to. But that means sewer rates are going to have to go up, okay, at some point here. I just had somebody ask me the other day, they were like, you know, you've done all these changes and done all these upgrades. When's my sewer bill going to go down? I just looked at him, I said, your sewer bill's never going to go down. It can't. There's no possible way. Our sewer bill was so low before, and we've had 5 increases since I've been mayor. And I'm trying to stage this so we don't have to have an increase till 24 or 25 right now. I mean, it's going to be down the road a little bit, but we're going to have some increases. We still have one of the lowest sewer bills in the state of Indiana. Our average bill is $48 a month. And we still have 33% of our people on the minimum bill of $28 a month. Yet in Evansville, Indianapolis, other places, they're paying $100 a month. That's what their bill is because they're ahead of us in projects. This is a federal mandate. Congressman Bouchon helped us with that. I'm all about clean water and all that, but these bureaucrats sit out there in these little cubicles in DC and tell us how much dirty water, and that Wabash River is the cleanest it's probably been maybe ever, you know, other than farm stuff that goes into it. But yet we have to spend another $300 million over the next 30 years because we are mandated to do that. We have to spend 2% of household median income to solve the problem that they identified. So it is what it is. It doesn't matter who you elect mayor or city council. you got to do this stuff or they fine you, $100,000 a week if not being in compliance. So I'm just warning you that it's working out there. It's going to come back. I'm just going to try to minimize and have small increases along the way so we don't have any big ones. Here's some upcoming projects that we have related to stormwater. We don't have any stormwater funding. So we have wastewater funding. So when you pay the sewer bill, we have to pay for both sewer projects and stormwater projects. South Brown Avenue, we're going to be doing this year. The design is completed. It's about a $2 million project to put curbs and gutters in from Wallace up to where we stopped. And I don't remember that subdivision's name there on South Brown, but to get it up to there, because we have the ability, you have to have the infrastructure in place before you put drains in. So Holman Street can support that and get it to Thompson Ditch. That was done, many years ago. And this will allow us to capture that stormwater in there, send it to Holman Street, which sends it to Thompson Ditch. Lincolnshire Woodshire is the only neighborhood on the east side that still contributes to the sanitary. All the other neighborhoods out there, when it goes into storm drains, Woodridge, you name it, Dobbs Glen, all the rest of them, their water goes to retention ponds or ditches, works its way to Deming Park and works its way to Thompson Ditch. In Lincolnshire Woodshire, part of that goes into the combined sewer system. So we've got to fix that. It's the only subdivision like that. And so it's going to be about $7-8 million to do that neighborhood. So it's an expensive venture, but all the streets are going to have to be ripped out and new drains put in, new storm drains that go to work its way through the natural system and not go into our sewer system. We have no choice but to do that. And so we're starting the design on that. We've hired a consultant to begin that process, but I got to make that fit into all of this. It's part of that 300 million, but it's one of those things that it's going to have to come sooner than later. Lift station upgrades are underway. I think it was 18 lift stations we worked on last year. We've got 120 lift stations in the county. And so we did about 18 last year. So we'll spend a couple $2 million on that this year. That's part of that 300 million also. Locust Street, I get complaints, people saying, you got to pay Locust Street from 13th Street to 25th Street. Well, we can't because the sewer is not in good shape underneath that. If I go pave it, we're going to have to rip it all out and fix the sewer. So right now we're working to do preliminary on that to find out if we have to replace the whole sewer or only replace parts of the sewer. We can go in and reline them, some of them, but we don't know yet because we haven't done the camera work. Ohio Street's the other one that has a serious problem, kind of in the downtown area. We have done the camera work on that. So now we're waiting for the consultants to evaluate what we've cambered. Our guys cambered it. And so they'll figure out, but you're talking just between those two, that's probably $20 million worth of work or less if we can reline some of those and we don't have to replace them. So we can't pave Locust right now. Ripple board effect, old railroad tracks underneath there, the old interurban there too. But we're working on that and I'll share more information as we move forward. Go ahead. Economic development. So we had a tremendous year last year. I was in the EDC meeting 2 weeks ago and I'd asked Steve Witt to put this together for me because it's hard for me to track them like that. And he does a really good job of updating us, but we put a little quick chart together. This is just last year announcements. $516 million worth of investments, 869 new jobs in Vigo County. Several of these are in the industrial park. A couple of them are in the city. I say we're cautiously optimistic, 2, possibly 3. I think it might be more than that, as we talk, we can't reveal names and those kind of things, but we've got a couple of big ones that are really taking a second, third look at Vigo County, Terre Haute. And then we've got some suppliers and others for some of these businesses that are up there on the board that will come here with a new business to provide, materials to these expansions or new businesses. So I'm going to guess, and I don't know, because I don't really track it the same way as I do other things with the city, but that's one of our biggest years of investment, $516 million of commitment and 869 new jobs. I still worry about filling the jobs, but it's the fact that we are doing well. We could put that up against any other city of our size in the state of Indiana and get definitely Illinois with more to come. Next slide. There's just a couple other little quick things I wanted to point out. In the city of Terre Haute last year, we had $74 million worth of building permits. 51 million of that was commercial and 22 million residential. we probably had more new home starts last year than we've had in a very, very long time. It's kind of amazing how many new homes are included in that 22 million. I didn't go through the 10 pages of permits to pick that out. I didn't have time this week, which I will. But part of our new system that I talked about earlier, we're able to track this differently, and I can run really neat reports on this and break it down. I just kind of ran out of time to be able to tap into that because I was out of the office last week. I've got a little vacation snuck in there. So I'll get that. I'll be able to tell you a lot more next year. That'll be pretty cool. And it did 33 ribbon cuttings. So we were down a little bit on ribbon cuttings last year. It's usually in the 45 to 50 range. Some of it was COVID, and you know, it was just down a little bit. But heck, this week I'm doing 6. So that's the most we've had in 1 week in a long time. And so this year's going to be pretty significant when it comes to ribbon cuttings. Go ahead. Casino, just want to touch on it for a minute. You all know they selected a site out east. It was the right thing to be east. No question about that. You know, I took some heat from some people immediately because I said it needed to be out east. And they're like, you know, well, first of all, I've got a bullet pulpit. I can stand here and say whatever I want to say, but it's up to the casino and it's up to the gaming commission where the casino goes. None of the rest of us, all we can do is give our 2 cents worth. Churchill Downs has been pretty close to the vest with everything. They did not tell us till a couple of weeks ago Thursday, when an announcement was made on Monday, where they were going to go. We didn't know for sure. I mean, they didn't tell us. And so I'm happy that it's east. I'm happy that it's in the TIF district, which provides lots of opportunities for us. But it doesn't really need a lot of infrastructure. We've already designed the New Margaret Avenue, the next section of that to the north of this property. And so it's already been designed, and we're just waiting for the next development to move ahead with that project. So as we move over the next few months, we'll begin to figure out how we not only upgrade Margaret Avenue, but we upgrade New Margaret Avenue, which is on the north side of that property, as we work towards Fruit Ridge and Margaret, as we continue to go the roundabouts and those connectors that opens up additional property for development. And so they're telling us a late May, early June groundbreaking and 14 months for completion. So we'll see. That's not all solid yet. They go to the Gaming Commission on March 8th, and we'll kind of see how this plays out. Estimated gaming revenue. So I want to remind people, because I keep getting asked about this. I think there's still some confusion from people of how this breakout works. That $10 million is based on $100 million of gross revenue. So I think if we got the Hard Rock, which was my preference, they would have done better than $100 million. That's a conservative number of general gaming revenue. I don't know what Churchill Downs will be able to do. I think we could have been better off with Hard Rock for a variety of reasons, but the name, the brand would have raised more money. So I'm sticking with this 10 million conservative number that we've had from the very beginning. And the way that breakout is, the city of Terre Haute, since it's located in the city, will get about 5 million of that. 3 million, but that's actually 4 million now that Churchill Downs has offered through the LDA process, which the commissioners are working on. And thank the commissioners for being here today and including me in that process. Working on that LDA, which, so there's a piece of that comes out of that for our foundation that will support community efforts. And then there's a $2 million split, which is state legislation that our Jail Solutions and Senator Ford and others helped us get included in there. So we split another 2 million that we wouldn't have even received had that not been put in the bill between the city and the county, school corporation, and regional planning. So if they do better than 100 million, those numbers go up. At least the first one and the last one. The foundation number will be the foundation number. So that's the revenue that will come back into the community, not including property taxes. So that's just this is going to be a huge benefit. But we've talked about the casino enough to, at this point, it's just it's crazy. We've been through quite a ride. Extreme. Department of Redevelopment, they completed reconstruction of Dean Avenue from 13th to 14th, along with 13th and a half and 14th from Washington to Dean, down kind of across from the Booker T. Washington. We've been working in that area for the last 5 years. We got a few more sections to go. Design and land acquisition for the new water line on Margaret Avenue from Stratford Hills out to Sycamore Terrace. It's been in the works for a while. It's a partnership with Indian American Water, and our TIF district out there is going to support that. It's probably going to be about $1 million project at the end of the day. But we've acquired all the land now, except I think maybe one. And so that project will be moving forward. And then design and land acquisition for the widening of Margaret from Rockwood back to Fruit Ridge. So kind of talking about that Margaret Avenue corridor, that's part of our, it's already been part of our plan for many, many years. But we're trying to position ourselves, do the design, get the land act, so that we can do that extension probably in 24, maybe 23. We'll see how it plays out. Next screen. We replaced the roof at Booker T. Washington. Redevelopment provided $200,000. The city provided through our funds $33,000. So we have a brand new roof on Booker T. Washington. I know Brandon Halleck's here somewhere. He was earlier. They put a lot of money into that building. I don't even know. I don't even know how to add up all the pieces, but the gym was 150,000, right? Gym's beautiful. If you haven't been in there, you got to go check it out. It's awesome. So we put quite a bit of money as a community into that building. It's functioning well. It needed a roof. Those things aren't cheap, but redevelopment came through and helped with some CBDG funds. We assisted Reach Services with $410,000 to help with this drop-in center. Those were COVID funds that redevelopment received, separate of the COVID funds that we received. And so that project is moving. It's moving a little slowly, but it's moving. This will be a drop-in center for the homeless, a place where we can send people, a place where they can help provide connected services. So it's a one-time assist. And in Jonah, 2 duplexes in that same Booker T. Washington area, $260,000 worth of 2 new duplexes right there on South 12th Street that will soon be finished and be housed with some folks through Jonah. Okay, next. So 22. So now we got another section that I should say complete, not completed. We haven't done it yet. That's my fault. A little typo there. But the next pieces of that same redevelopment project in that area, about $600,000-$700,000 worth of work. We get about $1 million a year in CBDG funds that we use for that. And so we're spending roughly, 3/4 of that each year to do another section. When that's completed, then we'll move on to another section of the city. Construction of that new water line should start sometime this year, and then the construction of widening, I'm not sure we'll get to the construction, but we'll be close to that. We're going to upgrade the lighting downtown to LED, all of our decorative lighting. We're working with a couple of different vendors to do that, using the street department to help do those upgrades. So you're going to see that. And we're putting audible street crossings in, working with some local folks, people with disabilities and things that'll be able to hear if their sight isn't very good. And so it's not a real expensive thing, but it's a real benefit, especially with more foot traffic downtown coming. So we'll be doing that in a variety of locations on Wabash Avenue. Go ahead. Condemned properties. So since I've been mayor, we've taken down 835 properties. We did 38 houses and 2 garages last year, so that's down a little bit than what we normally do. But we had to fire one of our contractors. It wasn't doing the job. And then one of the other ones got COVID, and his whole staff did. And so they missed months of work. And so we're a little bit behind, but this year we're going to do about 80 or 90. So those ones that we didn't get done last year are rolling over. Gave Dean up in redevelopment another $100,000, and we carried over what he didn't spend last year. So he's got a lot of money to spend on demolitions this year. But one thing to know is we've got more people purchasing condemned homes and remodeling them. I just heard a story yesterday about one in Terrytown area that I didn't know about, but Dean in redevelopment told me there were 10 last year that people bought and they're occupied now. And so we'd much rather do that, but we can't just leave them sit empty. So we're going to continue to tear down houses. I think we'll do about 80 to 90 this year if we can squeeze it in. The first, we just put it out to bid, 59 are on the first list. So I know we're going to do 60-ish. It just all depends what we can do for the rest of the year. I'm sure we can get another 30 or 40 for the second half of the year. Go ahead. And well, one thing I'll say, just back up for a second, there's 209 houses on the list right now. So if we do this nearly 100, we're going to cut it in half. I mean, that'll be the lowest we've ever had. When I took office, I think there were like, 700 and some, because we're putting more on there. We tear them down, but we have to condemn additional properties. But we're kind of getting to the point now where it's balancing out a little bit. So I just wanted to point that out, that we're down to 209 on the list. Okay, so planning activities. We're getting to the end here. I just wanted to reiterate the long-term control plan. And then we'll be doing a sewer rate study, which compares us to other. Baker Tilly does that for us every few years. It's time for them to do that as part of this. conversation and debate and negotiation we do with IDM to try to extend that out 30 years instead of 20. But we'll do the rate study, so we'll know what everybody else in the state's paying for sewer rates and helps us guide what we're trying to do. The riverfront plan update, the county has committed $50,000, and I've committed $50,000 to update our riverfront plan. You know, that was done finished up at the end of 2008, and so it's overdue. And so we finally worked it out to be able to make that happen. So we're going to start that this year. A 12-point strategic plan, our jail solutions is facilitating that on behalf of the city. Basically I'm paying for it, but it's what's important is sometimes that gets lost in the shuffle. What's important is you need to get everybody on the same page. And one of the things, and I've talked to several people in Edgewood Grove, I kind of want to do the same thing down there, maybe next, but to look at a strategic plan for neighborhoods. And 12 points there's a lot of great things going on in 12 points. Just had a ribbon cutting up there day before yesterday. There's just a lot of energy and activity. And so it's getting everybody kind of on the same page. So I thought it was important. Let's have a strategic plan. Let's listen to the public. They had 4 public sessions recently. We'll put this strategic plan together. The city will be a partner in this. We'll help with some pieces of it. They're going to continue to get grants and raise money. We're going to take this to the next level. So I appreciate all the efforts of the folks up there. I just think that's an important part of our community. I hated to see the CVS close. You know, they put a note on the door one day and said, we're closing in 3 days, but we'll figure out what maybe could happen with that building. But that whole area up there, and it kind of broadens out just from that general business area too, beginning to look at Coy Park to the east and some other things. But I just think it's important to get everybody on the same page. So we will have that soon when we roll that plan out. Hired a consultant for Fairbanks Park, as I mentioned earlier, doing a great job. You're going to be very impressed with this plan when it rolls out. Then we just got to figure out how to fund each piece. That's a big piece of what we're doing right now. Next, we're going to do Ray Park. So we talked about the clubhouse, but I need to have that same strategic plan for Ray Park because all these different pieces, there's probably going to be 5 or 6 or 7 projects within Ray Park over the next 5 years or so. So we're going to do that next. We did a preliminary housing study. Our jail solutions did that or helped us with the READY grant that I'm going to talk about in a minute. But we're not in a good spot with housing. And that's one of the things that hurt us with the F-35 project that we didn't get. That was one of our negative marks, one of our few negative marks. We've got to figure out how to deal with this. We're going to have some builder incentives in there, whether that means we waive sewer tap-ons or we put the sidewalk in front of the house, whatever. I'm going to work on turning that into something formal. We've got a couple of projects, bigger projects we're working on, but I need to drill this down to individual properties. So we're working on that builder incentive plan, and the state of Indiana is going to do a housing study for the entire state. And so we'll latch on to that as the formal study. We kind of know a lot right now, but we need a plan to move forward and figure out how we start, filling in missing teeth. I'm not talking about a lot of new subdivisions, but figuring out how we build within the city infrastructure. And then the neighborhood revitalization project, Hertz Rose, Rise Hall area, that Locust Street. We intend to do some big things up there in that particular park. I didn't mention them in the other park slide because we've kind of been working on this separately. Art Spaces has got a $100,000 grant from Centerpoint Energy to do an art project up there. Still need a little bit more money, and Mary Kramer's working on that. But whatever we do with Locust Street, we're going to improve Locust Street. Hopefully I don't have to rip it all out, but we'll replace, the road, upgrade that park and work on a strategy in that neighborhood between 13th and 19th, 3rd Avenue and Chestnut to build some new homes in there. Improve sidewalks, make sure there's ADA ramps at every corner, new street lighting. It'll be a whole thing to revitalize that neighborhood. So I've got the plan. I just haven't rolled it out publicly yet because I still need a few partners to get on board. But I just wanted you to know that's a separate major project in the inner city that we're really going to tackle over the next couple of years. Go ahead. Legislative issues. I'll just touch on these briefly because I'm breathing a sigh of relief at this point with the legislature. They're not doing anything that's going to make life more difficult for us. Business personal property tax, I can't say it's dead, but it's on life support. They pulled it out of the bill, but when they go to conference committee, it could come back. I know if you own a business, you don't want to pay business personal property tax. I get it. I'm talking to the chamber crowd. I get it. But as I take you back to the 13.8 million that we're not collecting this year in property taxes, This would be about another $5 million hit to the city budget. So that would just be a straight up $5 million loss. We collect about $25 million a year in property taxes, okay? So that's a 20% hit on our budget if they take that away with no replacement. I was involved with this. I sat on a summer study committee a few years ago as the president of AIM, the Association of Cities and Towns group. And I'm going back to the State House Monday or Tuesday. I haven't told Rachel that yet, but I got an email last night from the AIM leadership saying they need me at the State House first of the week to make sure we do everything we can to kill this. And once again, I understand the need to reduce taxes. I get that. But you can't just cut them and then leave it up to us to figure out how to raise the revenue. Well, the county's not going to raise the local option income tax. That's what most of the legislators say. Just raise your local option income tax. We're building a jail and we've already raised it. It's not going to change for a very long time. So that's not fair to push that on the locals then to make up for the revenue. So they're looking at a few different things. Senator Travis Holden, who's chair of tax and fiscal policy in the Senate, he's the one that's helped us so far. He's been a great asset and ally. Got to know him pretty well. But right now, I got to fight that one still. And I'm sorry, but I got to continue to fight it unless they come up with replacement revenue. This innovation development district I'm concerned about because the state, this new chip plant that's going into Ohio, you've all heard about, gigantic plant, huge $1 billion investment. Ohio reacts really fast. So our folks in Indiana are like, well, we need to be able to do the same thing. So if a big plant wants to come, the state needs to go control and create a TIF somewhere. So if there's a bunch of vacant land, say there's 100 acres somewhere in a county, then the state would come in, create this innovation development district fund and manage that instead of the locals doing it. So that means they keep the money. So the money they invest in helping to facilitate this company to come to Indiana, then the state would keep the revenue from that. No, I mean, if they want to create a fund, then create a fund to help us, give incentives, but don't come into our communities and run a TIF district by the state of Indiana. So I'm totally opposed to that. The sunset of the food and beverage tax, that's another killer. I mean, our food and beverage tax is doing really well. And it's helping pay for the convention center and it'll help pay for the next projects that CID comes up with. But we have it. Nobody's complaining about it. You pay it everywhere you go. Why would you want to sunset that? And then all of a sudden, when it reaches the end and it just cuts that revenue off, and you have no other way to fund what you're doing. So I don't know where that one came from, but that's one I'm fighting too. And then the local workforce recruiting and retention, I kind of hear that's dead. Rachel, is it kind of dead, or where do you think that one's at? Yeah, okay, good. But in a way, but parts of that were really good, where we got to figure out a way to train people and keep people in Indiana. We don't have, our pool's not big enough. The labor pool is too small here. Terre Haute, Indiana as a whole. We've got to do something there. So I don't know, they need to rework that bill in a way to do the right things to help us recruit and retain. I don't know where that's going to go. And then I just put TIF on there because every session they try to do something to squeeze us on the TIFs. And a lot of it has to do with the school corporations. They don't get TIF money. I get that. Nobody else gets TIF money. If the TIF's in the county gets the money. If the TIF's in the city gets the money. It's that way everywhere. A few people abuse it and spend it on things they shouldn't. So the legislators want to make a law to penalize everybody. We got to stop doing that. So I'm not going to harp on legislators. It has nothing to do with Congress. So we're okay, Larry. Just telling you that these guys are always trying to figure out a way to take home rule away. And I don't like that. Next one. Ready grant. So we asked for 73 million. We knew we weren't going to get that, but we thought we'd get 50. Very disappointed. Not happy with a lot of folks related to that. They changed the rules of the game the day they awarded it. So we're working, and I know that others are working on our behalf with the governor and to find a way to make us whole on this in the coming year or two. I think the legislature is looking for some additional money next year, but we can't, and I'm going to go to the projects here in just a second, but the RDA is working with the IEDC. They're not putting any money out yet, IEDC, but we got to figure out how we deal with these projects. So roll on to the next screen. I've got 3 screens here that shows the Vigo County projects. So we've got school corporation related things, colleges and universities, a housing project, essential worker village that we wanted to do, the courtyard and residence inn, Marriott parking garage downtown. We need that bad. Next screen. The Deming Park pool upgrade, the sports center and Eastside aquatic feature, Fairbanks Park, Ray Park, some of those things we can pull off the list and deal with ourselves. That's what we're kind of working with. The Equine Center at St. Mary's, SWO Children's Museum, and the last one, Turn to the River, the Mill, which is private, Wayfinding Initiative, which is an expansion of what I talked about earlier, Rose Home Adventures Project. So you see that there's a variety of things in here that we got to figure. All these things are great. We need to figure out a way to fund them. So the RDA is going to have to figure out how to spend that $20 million in multiple counties. So obviously you're watering down the project. But we're going to go through and try to figure out which things we can fund a different way. And we're going to get all these things done. I don't know how long it's going to take, but we're going to get it done. So we're counting on our legislators and the governor to help fund the rest of it. So all I'll say again is I'm disappointed in the amount, thankful for what we got, but we should have received 50 million. There's no doubt in my mind. And that 30 million is still on the table somewhere. We're going to find a way to get it. ARPA funds, our total allocation for the city was basically 36 million. We received 50% of it in May last year. We get the other 50% this coming May. We spent 4.9 million so far. The final rules are released, which didn't help a thing. I thought it would be clarifying things, but didn't. You still have to hire an attorney basically, or use your attorney to give you an opinion on every expenditure to make sure you're in compliance with these federal rules. So enough said about that. The ARPA team will meet later this spring. Probably our next, we're planning on doing one appropriation a year. We have to spend it all by the end of 26. We have to have it all committed by the end of 24. But we're going to begin to do some of the things with parks right off the bat and maybe a few other things. But we're moving forward with that. Very thankful we have that money, but there are a lot of rules about what you can spend it on. Workforce development. I mentioned it earlier, but we've got to figure out a way, our population didn't drop. Okay. I wouldn't bet my life on it, but what I know is that we still have, we have more accounts, sewer accounts, and our utilization is up. So if all these people left, you'd think we'd have fewer sewer accounts and or utilization would go down. So when I just look at a few little, I know the school corporation numbers are down with kids, I get that, but there's no way we dropped that much in population. They just did a terrible job because of COVID. They didn't go door to door. They relied on people mailing them in. Terrible job. So it is what it is. We have to live with it. But we've got to figure out, really crunch the numbers ourselves and figure out some strategies. Keep it local, graduates, figuring out remote workers, dealing with trailing spouses, because a lot of those people make those decisions, figuring out how we can improve the quality of life. And some incentive programs, we're looking at Make My Move right now, which brings remote workers to your community with some financial assistance. We may try something with that, and then just a community marketing strategy. So we got to do some things differently, I guess is my point, but we'll move on from that. That's a whole topic within itself. These are just some topics I wanted to just briefly touch on. Convention Center coming along great. I know Tennille's here somewhere. I saw her earlier. It's going to work out really well and going to be great. Larry Bird Museum is trailing behind that, but it's moving now. So we'll have, an opening at the Convention Center. We'll have an opening at Larry Bird Museum later. But I'm just so happy that where we're at now, that it's actually a reality. I wanted to touch on the Vigo County School Corporation building project just for a minute. I'm supportive of what they're trying to do. It fits right into our community plan. We've got to have good schools. And so we got to figure out a way to make this work and not have too big of a tax impact on our residents. So, it's a tough one for all of them involved. I get it. Everybody's struggling with that. It's trying to figure out, exactly what to do and how to do it. They've got a strategy moving forward now. So we'll see how that formalizes over time. And then the referendum will be here before we know it. So I just wanted to be on record that I'm supportive of them moving forward with this project. We can't, one of the things that I've heard from people is, well, the only reason why the school corporation has to do what they're doing is because the city's using all the money out of the TIF districts. It goes back to my original question or point while ago with TIF districts. They've never had any of that revenue. It's always been in the TIF district. So that's just the way it works. It's that way everywhere. And I think school corporations and the associations are really pushing the legislature for more funding. I get it. And so they're looking at ways to do that. But all the projects that we've done, the convention center was funded with local option income tax and food and beverage tax. The police station was done through TIF dollars, which school corporation doesn't touch. The jail was done through local option income tax. None of those projects have anything to do with the school corporation. It has no impact at all. their funding sources are different. And so I hear that noise in the background sometimes, and I know some people spoke at some public meetings about that, kind of blaming the city and the county for doing projects that's hurting the school corporation. We are not hurting the school corporation with those projects at all, totally different funding sources. It's tax caps that are affecting school corporation and the fact that they got a big amount of, projects they have to do. So I just wanted to mention that because we're trying to work together here. We've done some major government projects. This is the next huge one that's coming. We got to find a way to support that, and generally speaking, in our community. City Hall upgrade remodel. I've been working on this for about a year. Our building was built, opened up in 1933, has a lot of needs. We still got old electrical system, the knobs and things in some areas. So I'm working on that. I'm trying to figure out a way to fund it and work through that. I'll be getting with the council soon to kind of bring them up to speed. But my goal is to remodel the rest of the building. It needs to be brought up to where it should be. I wanted to mention the First Tee program just really quickly. Teaching kids how to play golf, exposing them to golf. The program continues to grow. Mike Harding and some others have really been working on this. They recently got a grant from the health department, significant grant for the next few years. And the school corporation's been great to start exposing kids to the game of golf. So health-wise, activity besides cell phones and laptops, it's something that I really feel strongly about, and I wanted to mention it because it's going really well. I helped fund some of the initial kickoff, and they raised some private funds. Now it's kind of going on its own. So it's doing a tremendous job in exposing kids to an athletic thing that a lot of them might not ever have the opportunity to do. We're going to be rolling out a 311 phone app this year. I wanted to do that earlier, but kind of got delayed for a variety of reasons, but we're going to be rolling that out so you'll be able to use your phone to report things. We still got probably about 200 calls a day in 311. So we get a lot of calls, but I want people to be easier for them to take a picture and send it in and do things that they can't do right now. And so clean that up. I mentioned the fire museum just briefly. We're going to have to tear that old fire station down. We're in the process of getting everything out of there. I want to find a downtown location of the fire museum. So I just wanted to mention that. Try to pick up the pace here a little bit. Community plan, it's going well. It kind of got a little bit slowed down because of COVID. It's hard to meet. Just people had things going on. But what's really important is our structure is strong. Josh is on board now with the chamber, who's going to head this up and help to facilitate moving forward. But we've got to halt the population decline, increase per capita income, and I'm going to touch on that one more time in just a second. But our 6 task forces that you're all aware of, we've got community leaders on all these teams, and we've got about 100 and I don't know how many people, 125, 150 people that are working on this. But we're going to reinvigorate the plan here in 22. We get out of COVID here and move forward to really ramp this thing up. Next slide. So there's the 6 categories. So there's just some things that I highlight here. I'm not going to go through all those, but things that are actually happening. So you can see that West Central Business Hub, some things that they're doing and some programs they put into place. The tourism, what we're trying to do with that, cleaning up the city and put signage in. United Way, strong neighborhoods, deal with infrastructure related things in neighborhoods. The Fairbanks Park project, health and wellness, addictions related app, and talent retention. All those things are so important. So those are our focus areas. So everything we try to do, we find a way to plug them into here so we get that support and the resources to move it forward. Go ahead. Overall steering committees in the process of being formed, so kind of a bigger, higher level thing. That's one of the things that Josh, Kristen are working on. Communications marketing strategy. We want to keep the community informed and energized. And long and short-term indicators and an interactive dashboard is what's coming next. We want to keep people engaged with this. And all those processes are being put in place to ensure long-term success. Go ahead. And so these key initiatives, I just want to hit these one more time, right next to the last slide. Population growth. We gotta get population moving in the direction. I still think it's flat. I don't think it dropped, but we got to move it up. Workforce development retention couldn't be any more important. We need help from the state because we need some funding. Housing inventory. So we need to do that formal study as part of the state, and then we got to figure out how to increase our housing, whether it's both apartments, condos, single family homes, whatever. We got to do it across the board. Increase household income, so important. Some of these new jobs that are coming in pay pretty well. So you gotta have that chain for people to be able to move up and make their household have more funds available. And then the quality of life project that helps us with all those other areas. We're gonna make those investments. Final thoughts. I don't know if I have any. Here's what I'll say. This community is doing really, really well. It just is. There's a few little negative things, no question, but we're a lot better off than a lot of other communities. And we're not, Terre Haute's doesn't brag about itself very much. But you look at those economic development investments that people are making, you look at this community planning effort, working with the commissioners, myself, probably better than ever. We're trying to do good and big things. I've got $200 million worth of infrastructure projects and $300 million worth of stormwater and wastewater projects on the books. $500 million of city work that I need to do over the next, some of that will be over the next 5 years of the 200 million section. And then of course we can't do it all, but we'll do a lot of that with some help from state and federal funds. But hopefully the 300 million will be spread over 30 years. But so we're going to continue to make investments is my point. And we have to do that. We got to stay in the game, and we're doing it. And as a community, I've never seen so much cooperation and energy from a variety of sources that I've had. I mean, I've lived here my entire life and in my years as mayor, all that, we just got to continue to build on that and take it to the next level every year. And I really feel like we're doing that. So to say I'm bullish on Terre Haute would be an understatement, because I really am, not just because I'm the mayor and I'm trying to be a cheerleader, but I feel it more so than any other time that I've been in this office or lived in this city. And where do we go from here? It's up to us. And so we're going to continue to do what we need to do as a city. County's going to do their part. All the other players here, we're going to play our role and make sure we move the city forward in the county and really make us stand out over here in West Central Indiana. I'm excited. I really am. It's an exciting time. Everything I'm working on, really, I would bet 99% of it's positive. And that's not normally what I deal with, but right now it is. And I want to keep that energy going and keep moving, and we're going to do that. So having said that, questions. I know a lot of you probably got to go, but sometimes I only get a few questions because I talk too much and you're ready to leave. So yeah, okay. Take care, Congressman. So questions any of you might have. Anything at all that I covered or didn't cover?
The smell of the wastewater.
Yeah. We go through cycles where we take systems offline, or we have issues that crop up and we have to take it down. So it's a temporary situation, and we'll go through those periodically. And I always told people that you can't 100% eliminate a smell, and it's kind of an earthy, more, it didn't stink like it used to, but it still has a smell. And so they're working, and we'll get that. And then, a year from now, we'll run into something again for a period of time, but it's a process that you have to go through each time something like that happens. So we're working on that. We'll get her. We spent a lot of money down there, and so we're able to do some things we couldn't do in the past, but it's a process.
Thank you.
Yes.
The 2 million split between Vigo County and the city. Do you know what the breakout is of that split?
Yeah, it's 40, 30. What, 15, 15? Rachel?
Yes.
Yeah, 40, 30, 15, 15. Thank you. City gets 40, county gets 30. The reason why we did it like that, we wanted to help school corporation out a little bit, and we wanted to help regional planning. So we'd have a funding source for regional planning, which has led to a lot of these success stories so far. Not $30 million worth of ready we can get, but we're getting there. But we wanted to make sure that if the casino located in the county or the city, that we get riverboat money now, that we get from all the rest of the casinos. Well, when you have a casino in your community, you don't get that money anymore. They'll share ours everywhere else, unless you have a casino. So we wanted to make sure that the city and the county were whole with that 40 and 30%, depending on where they landed at, that we wouldn't lose that money. So they'll get that with this new legislation, or that additional legislation. Come on, somebody's got Rick. What do you got? Is my electric bill gonna go up? Maybe sound good with the sewer bill. Sorry. Hey, Earl, hang on. Earl's next. Go ahead.
Job well done, dude. Wow.
Thank you.
It takes a village of people. I think you've done a great job, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. Earl?
Mayor, that 837 new jobs
Uh-huh.
plus 600 casino jobs,
Yeah, didn't even add that on there.
that's nearly 2.5% of the $60,000 or 60,000 community workforce.
Mhm.
That's a big number.
Yeah, our unemployment rate should be about 0 when we fill all those jobs. It's amazing. It's a huge impact. I didn't add it on there because being a separate thing, but you're gonna put 1,000 construction workers together for a year and a half and then have 600 jobs there after that.
I realize some of those will be filled by non-county residents.
Yeah,
but
sure.
it's still a
Yep, no, a huge
that
impact. That's,
workforce development issue is huge.
it's very, very big, and I don't think it's getting the attention it needs in Indianapolis. Anything else? Yes.
No police station.
Uh-huh. I didn't mention a couple things. I couldn't put it all in here today. So let me talk about 13th and Holman first. You know, we got 3 proposals on that. So soon the city's gonna be out of the business of mowing the grass down there. With one of these proposals will come through. At the old police station, we just got all the evidence out. So we didn't tell anybody that because we didn't want them to get in there trying to do anything, but we just finished that, right, last week. So all the evidence from forever is out of that building now, and it's in our new building. So the building is empty. Appraisals are under process right now for that. And so once we get the appraisals back, then we can advertise the property and go through the same process we did with 13th and Holman. I would suspect a couple months now that'll be out to where people can bid on it. I've had interest, you know, we've had interest from that student housing developer. I'm not sure that's a good fit, but I'm just saying that. I want to get back on tax rolls, but the second is a local businessman that's interested in doing something there. And so that'd be a good fit, I think, what he'd like to do, but see if he puts a proposal in. So I think you'll know more in the next 60 days. Okay, so we're out of it, and I'm not going to tear it down yet because if we can get whoever takes it over to tear it down, I can save a couple $100,000. So I'm trying to do that. Anything else for the good of the order?
Mayor, as we become more of a destination city and county, that's something, to me, still seems like a popular destination for a lot of people, where most of our hotels and things are. Have you heard from out of the box ventures, Coast City Center, or anything, of them having plans moving forward with the, what used to be shopping there?
No, you know, that's a struggle. And as I've told people, you know, they got into that market at the wrong time. You know, they had like 6 malls when they bought ours originally. And then, you know, I don't think they have a strategy. That's my personal opinion. I don't think there's anybody here representing them today, but I haven't met with them for months. It's been a long time. I need to do that. I just haven't had time. But the last conversation I had, they were trying to ask us for ideas. Well, you know, I mean, yeah, I got all kinds of ideas, but you guys are the owners. You got to figure out what to do. The malls are changing everywhere. We all know that. You see that. Lots of different things are going into malls. I would expect the same thing to happen here. I just don't know how proactive they're being on that. So no, I have not heard anything recently, and I need to touch base and find out what's going on because I've not heard from them. They used to call twice a year, but not anymore. Okay, if that's the end of the questions, I appreciate you all being here today. Be safe today and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Just a couple of quick housekeeping notes. If you do not get the community plan newsletter, scan the QR code on the programs on your table and we'll get you signed up for that. Next event, Terre Haute Women's Conference out at the campus of St. Mary the Woods College. Enjoy the rest of your day and be safe.